Good evening, everybody. It's a great honor to have Professor Joe Jim Aguas from University of Santo Tomas in Manila in another lecture. In this series, we are organizing at the Institute for the Study of Values and Spirituality, and it's practically it's a project. We are trying to understand in various perspectives and cultures what is the relationship between values and spirituality in a context. The point is that the context it creates a different algorithm between values and spirituality. And we already had some very interesting presentations. One is of Osman Bilen, a friend of us. He's from Turkey, and he did something interesting about the Sufi perspective of spirituality of nature. So today we are very close to this perspective, but in a very different and interesting perspective, because we are talking about the relationship with reality, with nature, with habits, and this is, I think, is very informative for our in other areas than the Philippines. So yes, we are looking for a great presentation today, and I'll ask Joe to start his presentation.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much, Dan, for first of all for
I'll see how to yes to put you on the
I think I have already shared my screen, Dan, and
yeah
can we ask the participants to give us a thumbs up if
yeah
you can hear me and can see my presentation, please? Okay, I think they can hear me and see my presentation. Okay, so shall I start, Dan, my presentation?
yes sure
Okay. So again, it's good afternoon. Actually, uh, good evening here in Manila. No? We are six
yes
hours ahead of Romanian time. And before I start my presentation, I would like to thank my good friend Dan Pitoyo for inviting me to present this piece, part of the book project that John has initiated. So the title of my presentation is The Bahay Kubo, Enduring Symbol of Filipino Culture and Values. I will follow this presentation. First, introduction, then Philippines and the Philippine historical past, the Filipino worldview, then next, Philippine ethnic architecture. Then I will talk about the Bahay Kubo, and then relate the Bahay Kubo and the Filipino culture and values, and then my conclusion. Introduction. The Bahay Kubo or Nipa Hut is an iconic symbol of Filipino culture. As a traditional Filipino dwelling, it stands as a profound symbol of the Philippines' rich cultural heritage and architectural ingenuity. More than just a simple hut, it embodies the deep connection to the environment, a testament to sustainable living, and a reflection of Filipino community values. Its simple architecture exemplifies the simple Filipino lifestyle. Its materials, design, and ornaments manifest Filipino ingenuity and adaptability. The Bahay Kubo or the Pahat was the most common form of housing for Filipinos during the pre-colonial era and the early Spanish era. While it may no longer be the common dwelling of Filipinos in these modern times, there are still some Bahay Kubo in rural areas, especially in fields, forests, riverbanks, and seashores, where they are used as temporary shelters by farmers, fishermen, and local folks. From a one-room simple house, it has evolved into a more spacious dwelling, and its form and design are still copied in the construction of modern houses. Now, just to give you, especially those who are not Filipinos or have not been to the Philippines, just to give you an overview, a general view of the Philippines. The Philippines, especially the Republic of the Philippines, is an archipelagic country in Southeast Asia consisting of about 7,641 islands. It is the world's 14th most populous nation with over 112 million people. Its capital is Manila, and there are three major island groups: Luzon in the north, Visayas in central Philippines here, if you can see my cursor there, Mindanao in the south. And the official languages are Filipino and English. Majority of the Filipinos are Roman Catholic. Now, the historical past. Filipino culture and values cannot be separated from its historical past. Its past traces back to the pre-colonial, colonial, and post-colonial periods. In the pre-colonial period, the natives of the archipelago traded with their Chinese and other Malay neighbors. When the Spanish colonizers arrived in the 16th century, Christianity was introduced and it had profound influence on the region's culture and tradition. The Spanish came to colonize what was then an archipelago composed of different and often warring tribes headed by local chieftains or datu. Before the arrival of the Spanish, Islam was the main religion of the archipelago. However, long before Islam reached the archipelago and Spanish colonizers arrived, the natives already practiced a form of religion, animism, and had a distinct pre-colonial culture. The archipelago would later be named Las Islas Filipinas, or the Philippines, in honor of King Philip of Spain. And since the arrival of the Spanish, Christian doctrines and teachings have been integrated into the local, native, and pre-colonial cultures. Today, aside from Catholicism and other Christian denominations, as well as Muslim communities in the southern Philippines, there are also indigenous religions. These indigenous religions preserve the pre-colonial culture, beliefs, and practices of the native people. So there are three religious groupings in the Philippines: the Christians, our brother Muslims in the majority in the south, and the scattered IP people, the indigenous peoples scattered all over the Philippines. Now, let's talk about the Filipino worldview. The Filipinos, like their Asian neighbors, have a holistic worldview. The Filipino mind is not inclined to compartmentalize reality. The world or reality is viewed as a whole in which everything, the physical, spiritual, and divine, is an integral part. Even the self is regarded not as totally separate entity, but as an integral part of the world or reality. The Filipino believes that he is one with humanity and connected with creation and nature. He experiences himself as part of the world and acknowledges that life space on earth is not one for all. It is for everybody. This worldview is reflected in the Filipino culture, which is a complex of distinctive spiritual, material, intellectual, and emotional features that characterizes Filipino society. It manifests in the arts, languages, traditions, beliefs, practices, the modes of life, and value systems of the Filipinos. It is a way of living and relating that embodies centuries of history, diverse influences, and profound sense of community, shaped by its diverse ethnic group, history, and geography. The Filipino values include personalism, loyalty, hospitality, close family ties, solidarity, and social cohesion. Other values include gratitude and shame, spirituality and religiosity, hard work and perseverance, patriotism, and respect for elders. The Filipino core values and religious, social, and cultural beliefs are reflected in their pre-colonial, colonial, and post-colonial beliefs, practices, songs, music, dances, and architecture. And one symbol of the Filipino cultures, of the Filipino values and beliefs, and ingenuity is the Bahay Kubo, a quintessential example of Filipino vernacular culture or architecture. Now, let's talk about briefly about Philippine ethnic architecture. The Philippine architecture is a rich and diverse tradition shaped by the country's tropical climate, seismic activity, and abundant natural materials. Houses in the Philippines during the pre-colonial period followed a pattern common throughout Southeast Asia. They were constructed of wooden frames with floors raised up high above the ground. Such houses stood on stilts like spiders on many legs. Thus, they protected the occupants, the dwellers, from the humid ground, from seasonal floods, insects, wild animals, and sometimes human enemies. The resulting space below the floor served as a workspace and animal pen, where they kept their animals. The traditional Filipino structures, like other Southeast Asian architecture, are characterized by pile construction, these stilts, hip or gable roofing, and a reliance on materials sourced directly from the environment, such as native wood, vegetation, and sometimes mud. The primary construction materials across the Philippines and Southeast Asia is bamboo, valued for its versatility in everything from post and flooring to roofing and walling. Builders also incorporate other local resources like coconut wood, mangrove, various hardwoods, pine wood, and stone for the main structures. The Filipino indigenous architecture draws inspiration primarily from the environment, especially the climate, terrain, vegetation, and fauna surrounding it, responding to communal and social needs, like the need to be safe from hostile and predatory tribes and to interact with his neighbors or with his fellow men. The indigenous house is a modest proportion as it is used essentially as shelter from the elements and as a place to cook, eat, and sleep. The house is so simple as most of the time its occupants, mainly the family, they stay outside or they work uh, under the house extended overhang or out in the fields or out in the sea. On certain occasions, the house also serves as social and cultural venue for social activities like weddings, wakes, death anniversaries, religious rites, and other celebration. Now, let's now go to the Bahay Kubo. So the Bahay Kubo is a one-room cubic house raised on stilts with steep roofs and wide roof space and constructed mainly of bamboo and touch-dried palm or grass. This native dwelling of lowland Filipinos is commonly called a nipa hut because it is mainly made of the sturdy nipa palm or nipa fruticans used for touching the roof. Hence, Bahay Kubo and Nipa Hut are almost synonymous. So when you say Bahay Kubo, it means Nipa Hut. This simple home is made of inexpensive materials. As I already said, bamboo and coconut for its wood, and woven nipa or anahaw leaves for its roof. The designs and the ornaments, however, may vary. Bahay Kubo is elevated from the ground to avoid dampness of the earth, avoid rats, vermins, and other animals, and waters at high tide, especially in those areas near bodies of water. It had posts of hardwood buried on the ground, a framework and slatted floor of bamboo, flap windows, and roof may be made of bamboo, nipa palm, coconut grass, and other natural materials. With its materials, steep roof, and windows that remain open except during storms, the Bahay Kubo had a natural ventilation that neutralized the tropical heat. According to one expert, it is a house that breathes. Through the passage of time, however, especially when the Spaniards and Americans arrived to colonize the country, the structure and architecture of many houses underwent significant changes. Some durable materials like hardwood, cement, and steel have been incorporated into the construction of the Bahay Kubo. Today's typical urban homes are two-story structures, sometimes three-story structures with a concrete ground floor, brick, concrete block, or wooden slat walls, and an iron or galvanized roof. But still, the design is inspired by the Bahay Kubo. Now let's talk about the parts of the Bahay Kubo. First is the hagdanan or bamboo ladder. In the picture, this is what? This is the hagdanan. Since the house is elevated, no, it needs a stair or a ladder or a hagdanan. It can be removed at night or when the owners or the occupants are away. In other variants, there is a small area where occupants wash their feet before going up. So this is a natural security of the Bahay Kubo. Nobody can enter it without the hagdanan or the bamboo ladder. Next is the bulwagan or hall or living room. It's a square or rectangular multi-purpose main room of the house. This serves as the receiving area for entertaining guests and visitors. At night, this area also serves as the sleeping area because it's common that there's only one common bulwagan of the Bahay Kubo. So it serves as a sleeping area where mats are spread on the floor for sleeping or as the dining area where the occupants sit on the floor or mats while eating from a low wooden table. A regular bedroom is not typically included in rural areas, although in some bigger Bahay Kubo, there is a separate room. Hence, the main receiving room often serves as a sleeping area at night. During the day, it serves as a dining, work, and entertainment area. Next is the silid or the room. So in some bigger Bahay Kubo, there is a separate room. Okay, there could be an adjacent room marked up by a sawali wall, the temporary wall. From the bulwagan where pillows, knitted mats, chests, woven rugs, and the household's personal belongings are kept. It could also serve as a private sleeping area where the women of the house or the household could change clothes in private. Then you have the kusina or lutuan or the kitchen. It's the cooking area found at the back or the rear of the house. The kitchen usually has the following features. The pog or the pogan, a table on top of which there is a river stone or kalan or a stove like here in the picture. And then there is also the banggera or banggerahan here, where it's a place for drying and storing pots, pans, drinking glasses, plates, and other utensils. To prevent fire from spreading when they are cooking, and to ensure a clean interior free from smoke and grime, the kitchen is either moved to ground level but still connected by a shed to the main house or a separate structure. Then you have the batalan, or it's like a comfort room or a washroom. No? So it could either be a roof or unroofed area where big water jars, usually it's used for drinking, washing, and bathing, are kept. It is a back porch that serves as a cleaning or washing area or even a bathroom. The floors of the batalan are made of whole bamboo cut somewhat loosely arranged, and it is usually connected uh, to the kitchen and often raised for better sanitation, as it is always wet, especially during the day. So we can enter the house or the bahay kubo either through the front porch at the front or at the back via the batalan, which can be accessed through a removable bamboo ladder, just like at the front of the house. Then you have the silong. So it's a space under the house used to store farm and fishing implements or other tools, as well as other heavy and bulky materials. It could also serve as a shelter for animals like pigs, chickens, and even carabaos, which is the typical farm animal for the Filipinos. So the elevated floor allows for ventilation in the house, especially during the hot summer days. So the area here, sometimes it is fenced off with bamboo slats in order to, uh, secure the things, the objects, the equipments stored in the silong. Now, there is the balcon or veranda or a balcony here, this part. In some houses, there is a front porch, which is usually one step or around 5 centimeters lower than the main floor of the house, which is the main receiving room of the house. Okay, so these are the typical parts of the Bahay Kubo. How is the Bahay Kubo built? In areas frequently affected by typhoons, houses are low and squat. However, in areas where it is typically hot and humid, houses are taller, with elevated floors and spacious rooms, allowing for proper ventilation. The forms and materials are generally the same, a cubical or square form made of bamboo and nipa, though variations may occur depending on local materials, terrain, and climate. The bamboo and nipa contribute to the house buoyant, cool, and easy feel. For all its simplicity and humble appearance, its construction demands special skill and craftsmanship or artisanship. So there is specific technology involved in constructing the Bahay Kubo, especially in constructing or making the touch floors. Of the many species of bamboos in Southeast Asia, especially in the Philippines, the preferred variant for house construction is the spiny variant called Kawayan Tinik. Kawayan is bamboo. Nipa is planted during the rainy season when the soil is wet, and the mature nipa plant grows to approximately 3 meters, characterized by its long, slender leaves. So the leaves are taken and they are used for touching and walling. They are doubled up and sewn together before drying. Other roofing materials include coconut grass, rice stalks, sugarcane leaves, split bamboo, anahaw, and various palms. Woven bamboo strips, split bamboo, coconut leaves, and abaca leaves are used for walling. Rattan is used for lashing and tying. Now, can you still hear me? Give thumbs up if you can still hear me, please. Audio, if my audio is working. Okay, thank you. Now, there is a lot of uh, beliefs, superstitious belief involved in constructing the Bahay Kubo. The Filipinos believe in creatures in the underworld and in the power of the talisman or agimat in local dialect. Such beliefs typically guide their way of life, and they devise means to counteract the consequences and effects that might befall them in extreme cases. The Filipino attitudes towards various beliefs are reflected in the architecture. House construction is largely influenced by these various superstitious beliefs and their attendant consequences of good health and family life, as well as protection from evil spirits. This included the site selection. So if you go to construct your nipa hut or bahay kubo, there's I believe involved in selecting where to put up the house. Okay, site selection. Then there are also beliefs about which month or day in seasons are, you know, correct in building a house. There are rituals before starting the constructions and some other beliefs. For example, a house that faces east is generally considered lucky. It's the morning sun, no? So people prefer their their house to face where the sun rises. As the rising sun is often associated with happiness and prosperity. All stages in the house construction are marked by rituals, such as placing coins in the hole of the main post of the house to ensure, so before they put the post, when they dig the hole, before they can put the post, they have to put coins, no? Put coins inside or in the hole to ensure financial stability of the family. They also believe in smearing of blood from slaughtered chicken or goat on the carpenter's tools and posts of the house to ward off any misfortune that might befall on the carpenter, the tools, and the house being built. During the house blessing, a new pot containing water is dropped to wet the floor, ensuring happy home. Now, from the Bahay Kubo evolved the Bahay na Bato, stone house, a traditional Filipino house that developed during the Spanish colonial era from the 17th to the 19th centuries. It is a stately and resilient structure that represents a hybrid architectural style, combining indigenous features with European colonial elements to suit the tropical climate and the rising economic status of the Filipino elite. The Bahay na Bato, along with other commercial structures that emerged late in the Spanish era, evolved primarily from the Bahay Kubo. Now, let's connect now Bahay Kubo and the Filipino concept of self. As mentioned, the Filipino has a non-dualistic and non-compartmentalized worldview. Such a non-dualistic worldview is reflected in his perspective on the self and the world. The Filipino self or person is manifested in his loob or the inner self. In philosophy, interiority. Loob is a Tagalog term that means inside or internal. It is used to refer to things within a space or time, but it can also be used in the context of the person or self, referring to that inner dimension or inner core of the self. The Filipino recognizes that the person has an inner core or a loob or a buot. And this is the inner self, the internal dimension of one's identity or personality. So, loob and labas. So, if there is loob, the internal, there's also the labas, the external, the outside. These two determine authenticity. If there is a consonance or conformity between the loob or the interior, the inner, and the labas, the external, then there is authenticity. Meaning to say, that person is a real, genuine person or totoong tao. If there is no consonance, then it is not authentic. It is just a pretension or pakitang tao. So in the outside, it may appear to be good, but in the inside, there is evil, okay, bad intention. So the self is related to other, the kapwa. So kapwas, or kapwa is the other, or he's a labas because he's other than the self. But in the Filipino culture, in the Filipino worldview, the loob, the tao, in the kapwa-tao, they share an identity. Kapwa means shared self, shared identity, shared inner self. Now, the inner core or loob is extended or expressed in the person's labas through their actions, behaviors, and attitudes. His actions and behaviors also have their value because they emanate from the person's loob or inner core. While actions and behaviors are outward expressions of the loob, these actions or behaviors reach the very core of their being, so that Filipinos attach great value to their actions or behaviors because they reflect the value of their being. In other words, the labas, the actions, the outward manifestation of the self reflects the value of the inner being, of the inner self. Now, let's connect that to the Bahay Kubo. The Bahay Kubo is a representation of the Filipino notion of the self, characterized by concepts of loob and labas. The Bahay Kubo is not just a physical structure. It is a home, that inner space where memories, aspirations, and affections are formed and treasured. It is a place where families gather not only to stay, but to celebrate every significant life occasion. It is a place where one finds rest and inner peace. It is a place to entertain and to express hospitality to others, to welcome others from the labas. So the Bahay Kubo is an expression of the inner self. When somebody visits a Filipino home, the usual welcome greeting is, "Pasok po kayo sa loob." Meaning, please come inside. Pasok po kayo sa loob. Such is a gesture of Filipino hospitality, as if to say, come not only to my humble abode, but be part of my home, be part of myself. So that simple and humble dwelling place is a representation of the simplicity and good inner character or mabuting kalooban. Inside the Bahay Kubo, the values and the beliefs are on full display. There are images or statues of saints, framed pictures of family members, both old and new, celebrating their achievements. Now, aside from an expression of the Filipino self or loob, the Bahay Kubo is also an iconic symbol of Filipino culture. It embodies many of the Filipino values. Its simple architecture simplifies the simple Filipino lifestyle. Its materials, design, and ornaments convey a great deal about Filipino ingenuity and adaptability. So now let's talk about the Bahay Kubo and the core Filipino values. First, simplicity. The Filipino value of simplicity is a synthesis of practicality, environmental harmony, and social prioritization, rooted in the ingenuity and culture of the indigenous heritage. It reflects contentment, practicality, and a lack of ostentation, relating to an appreciation for what is essential and a generally unmaterialistic outlook. Filipinos, Filipino simplicity is related to their resourcefulness. They're often resourceful, making the most of limited resources and devising innovative solutions to their problems. The Bahay Kubo is a visible expression of simplicity, whose design prioritizes function over form, responding directly to the tropical climate and environmental constraints. Its materials are readily available, natural and renewable, like bamboo, nipa, and cogon grass. Its light construction and easy assembly reflect a simple need for shelter that could be quickly built, repaired, or even relocated. Its simplicity and minimal ornamentation reflect a lifestyle driven by necessity, efficiency, and resourcefulness. Next is humility. Humility is a value that contrasts with grandeur, emphasizing connection to the environment. It is demonstrated through modesty, respectful deference, and an avoidance of arrogance or excessive boastfulness. It is deeply intertwined with several core Filipino values, primarily emphasizing the importance of maintaining social harmony and an awareness of one's place within the community. Humility is an important aspect of possessing a good inner character or mabuting loob or mabuting kalooban. A person with mabuting kalooban is generally modest, gentle, and respectful, prioritizing the feelings of others over self-promotion. Filipinos often practice humility by being accommodating, avoiding conflict, and generally going along with the group. Too much arrogance disrupts the social dynamic. The Bahay Kubo embodies the value of humility through its unpretentious materials. Its natural materials like bamboo, nipa palm, and cogon grass are readily available and expensive. Such materials reflect a lack of pretension, prioritizing function and resourcefulness over opulence and permanence. Unlike stone or concrete structures meant to project power or wealth, Bahay Kubo is light, airy, and impermanent. Its modest size and materials avoid any suggestion of extravagance or boastfulness, aligning with cultural avoidance of kayabangan or mayabang. Mayabang means arrogant. Its single-room design and multi-purpose layout promote an egalitarian and communal way of life. There are no grand halls, segregated wings, or lavish decorations to denote extreme social hierarchy, reinforcing the value of social harmony. Its design also reflects a humble and adaptable relationship with the environment. The structure is easy to build, easy to repair, in fact, easy to maintain, and more importantly, easy to rebuild after a typhoon or a calamity. Resilience. Resilience is one of the most widely recognized Filipino traits. It represents the ability of Filipinos to adapt, to endure, and bounce back from hardship, tragedy, and immense challenges, be they personal, economic, or natural disasters or calamities. Filipinos possess the ability to survive, manifested in their endurance during difficult times and their ability to get by on so little. Filipinos make do with what is available in their environment. This survival instinct is closely tied to Filipinos who bravely persevere through the harshest economic and social circumstances. Filipino resilience is an active coping mechanism rooted in spiritual endurance. The Bahay Kubo is a perfect symbol of this value. Its ephemeral nature allows for quick repairs after natural calamities, embodying a spirit that bends but does not break. This reflects the historical experience of a people who have endured various trials, from colonial rule to natural disasters, always finding a way to rebuild and move forward. Its flexible bamboo frame and light materials are designed to bend and yield to strong winds, ensuring that even if damaged, the structure is easy and inexpensive to rebuild, reflecting, reflecting the nation's constant cycle of enduring, yielding, and recovering. Its architecture is a physical blueprint for survival, demonstrating the ability to adapt, expand, and quickly recover from adversity. Next is family-centeredness and communitarian spirit. Familism is one of the most important and foundational values in Filipino culture. It influences social behavior, economic decisions, and life goals, emphasizing loyalty, obligation, and emotional closeness to both immediate and extended family members. The Filipino family ties are incredibly expansive, extending far beyond the nuclear unit to include immediate family, which includes parents, siblings, and children, extended family, grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, and in-laws who are treated as full members of the family, ritual kins, godparents, and others, ninong or ninang, who gain significant social and moral obligation through the Catholic tradition of the compadre system. So compadre system is illustrated, manifested when my child, for example, his godparent is my compadre. Godparent during baptism or wedding, he is a compadre. So in the Filipino community, entire community could be one compadre system. Major life choices like career, marriage, and migration are rarely made individually and in isolation. They are typically discussed with and require approval from the family unit. Family-centeredness fosters a culture of emotional and physical closeness. This is one reason perhaps why it's easy for Filipinos to cope up with challenges and disasters because there is enough emotional support. The Bahay Kubo's design facilitates and reinforces the intense emotional and functional closeness of the Filipino family. The single open space of the Bahay Kubo designs promotes close interaction, constant communication, and togetherness. The lack of internal walls or segregated bedrooms compels the family, including parents, children, and sometimes extended relatives, to share a single space for sleeping, eating, and most daily activities. Next is the bayanihan, or the spirit of community. Perhaps the most iconic representation of the Bahay Kubo's cultural significance is its association with the concept of bayanihan. So people lifting, transferring the house to a different location. The Filipino term bayanihan refers to the spirit of communal unity, mutual aid, and cooperation that work together to achieve a common goal. It is the collective willingness of a community to help a member in need without expecting anything in return. The bayanihan spirit has always been a special feature of the Filipino character. Families help other families in the common struggle to survive. Bayanihan literally translates to being in a bayan. Being in a bayan. Bayan is community. Acting as one. It's an act of volunteerism, shared work. People contribute their time, their effort, their resources for the welfare of others in the community. The focus is on the collective goal, not on individual gain. It is a practical response to both individual and community or communal needs, which would be difficult to achieve if people with limited means did not organize. This selfless cooperation ensures that the community functions as a unified support system. Traditionally, when a family needed to move their bahay kubo, the entire community would lend a hand, physically lifting the house and carrying it to its new location. This act, often accompanied by singing and feasting, vividly illustrates the strong communal bonds and mutual aid prevalent in the Filipino community. Next is connection to nature and the divine. The Filipino connection with nature is a deeply ingrained cultural value characterized by a profound sense of harmony, respect, and adaptability to the tropical environment. This relationship revolves around the concept of equilibrium maintenance or pagkakapantay, equilibrium, which means having consistent, harmonious relations with nature, that is, living life according to the traditional and natural laws. This connection is rooted in the indigenous spiritual beliefs, practical survival skills, and a reliance on the land and sea for sustenance. In many indigenous Filipino cultures, the connection to nature is spiritual and sacred. The Bahay Kubo is the most visible symbol of the Filipino connection with nature and the divine. The house is not designed to conquer or fully isolate itself from nature, but to adapt to its forces. It utilizes readily available, renewable, and biodegradable materials like bamboo, Nipa, Kugot. This demonstrates a humble and sustainable relationship with the environment, as the structure can be easily rebuilt or reabsorbed by the earth. The open design, large windows, and slatted walls or floors maximize cross ventilation, relying entirely on natural breezes to regulate temperature, reflecting an intelligent use of the climate. Constructed from natural materials and often surrounded by gardens and rice paddies, the Bahay Kubo fosters deep connection between its inhabitants and nature. Now, conclusion. While the Bahay Kubo is the most widely recognized symbol of traditional Filipino architecture, particularly from the lowlands, the Philippines has actually over 100 ethno-linguistic groups that have developed a rich diversity of indigenous house types, but they have the same cultural characteristics, although it's uniquely adapted to its specific environment and materials. Let me just cite a few examples. The houses of the Cordillera, Northern Luzon, such as the Ifugao Bale, the Kalinga Binayon, and the Ivatan houses in Batanes, northern part of the Philippines, are built in mountainous terrain and are designed for cooler climates to withstand earthquakes and typhoons. In the southern Philippines, in Mindanao, houses often feature intricate carvings. They are adapted either to the forest or the sea, such as the Maranao Torogan, which is the ancestral home of the Dumility, and the Bajiao Lepa or still houses or houseboats, the traditional dwellings of the Bajiao or the sea gypsies, and the Tiboli Ganubong. The Bahay Kubo is an iconic symbol of Philippine-rich cultural heritage and architectural ingenuity. It is a symbol of Filipino simplicity, widely recognized as the quintessential Filipino home, representing a humble, resourceful, and sustainable lifestyle closely tied to nature. It embodies the Bayanihan spirit and reflects communal living, valuing close family ties, shared space, hospitality, and limited privacy, which encourages interaction and togetherness. It is a living proof of the Filipinos' ability to live in harmony with nature and the environment. So more than just a simple hut, it embodies the Filipino values, aspirations, beliefs, and core memories, as well as their deep connection to the divine, serving as a testament to sustainable living and a reflection of community values. The Bahay Kubo is not just a relic of the past, but a timeless example of a sustainable architecture that reflects the values, culture, identity, and ingenuity of a people. It is a simple yet powerful symbol of the Filipino spirit, blending traditional wisdom and functionality with harmony in nature, respect for the sacred and the divine, and a profound expression of personal and communal values. Maraming salamat po sa pakikinig. Thank you very much for listening. I will have to stop my sharing my
Thank you. Great presentation. And of course, we have already a new and very important addition to our already uh, very interesting approaches from different perspectives, cultural perspectives, on the relationship with nature, with what is beyond nature, but coming and starting from the inner self. And yet, as you mentioned, the inner self is connected with the outer self, and the other self is in a place. Uh, it's in an area described by the need of expressing what is outer self. And this is very important. This is very important. Simplicity is amazing because the simplicity can express better. You can think that the simplicity, it doesn't express better, but it can do because the core of expression is family. It's not just individual. No, in a house is not just an individual, but there is a spirit, a common spirit. So the relationship with nature is through a way of expressing the self. So this is the active philosophizing way of expressing now, because what you said, what it's in the Filipino developed, is this way of expressing. And yes, it is really special to understand that, for example, in Sufi, in Turkish Islam, the relationship with nature it has a perspective, but we can find connection with the fact that it's something similar but something different in the Filipino. So it's really amazing how we can discover the complexity of the relationship between values and spirituality in a context. So the floor is open. Please put some questions, commentaries, and we can start a discussion.
Anybody who would like to uh, make a comment or ask questions? Perhaps while waiting for their questions done,
Yes.
maybe they're still formulating their questions. Let me just put a kind of backgrounder to this topic. No? Remember, you asked us, our circle, no? About artifacts and values, right?
Yes.
And I presented a poster on Bahay Kubo because in my presentations in Romania, for example, when you talk about intercultural dialogue and values, I always talk about Filipino notion of kapwa, the Filipino self. I've been talking about this in several conferences, but I was looking for a physical, something physical. I mean, something a physical object that could embody or encapsulate the Filipino worldview, the Filipino self, the Filipino uh, core values. And I'm just amazed by the Bahay Kubo because the Bahay Kubo for me is an icon, a symbol, a representation of what a Filipino is. Okay, there
It,
are papers written about Bahay Kubo, but they focus on the architecture of the Bahay Kubo. Hardly, uh, very few. When I wrote that chapter on Bahay Kubo, hardly did I get a material connecting Bahay Kubo and the self. There
mhm.
are papers on the self, Filipino self, but very few, if talking about connection between Filipino values and the Bahay Kubo. So that's the background of this paper, of this presentation. Okay. So perhaps some people can add uh, their insights. There are Filipinos here, Filipino colleagues here, Dan. Uh, there is,
The question.
I think there is a question
Yeah.
from the chat. Um, Edward, can you just nakamute ba? Edward, can you just express the ano, express your question? Kasi nawala na yung hindi ko na mabasa. Yeah. Here, I can read. Yes, go ahead, Edward. Oh, okay. I will just read. I will just
I'm outside.
I will just read the question. Uh, your
Opo.
connection is
Can you hear me
perhaps
clearly
not.
po? Am I
How do we as teachers approach the teaching of such values related to the Baha'i Kubo to our students who tend to be more self-oriented, if not egocentric, in the hope of making them more other-oriented? For example, in recent years, some students, when doing group works, typically approach it by dividing and conquering, but not collaborating. They only work on their part, but do not care for the part of their group mates. That's a very practical. That's a very practical question, Edward. I think how do we approach this? No, make them more other oriented. I think we have to prepare them first before doing the task, because when we just focus on the task, that they have to accomplish in school, for example, the focus of the students is how to do the task. And the best for them, the best way to finish the task is to divide the task. But if I think you explain to them without emphasizing that this is a task, but emphasizing to them the process, I mean the relationship, instead of focusing that you have to follow this, you have to do this and do that, then they will be more other oriented than self oriented. The problem with doing these particular assignments of these group assignments is we start with these are the things that you should do. These are the things that you should be able to accomplish. You should be able to pass on this particular deadline. So the mind of the students are focused on accomplishing the task, but not on working together, because unconsciously they are now focused on finishing and submitting. I think you have to explain it. I think the focus should be in the very activity. No? In other words, let's not look at the output, but let's look at the journey. Right? Uh, Consider it as a journey, not as an objective that needs to be accomplished. Because an objective that needs to be accomplished demands strategy. So one of the strategies is to divide and then work on your own, and then everybody can, then you put together and you submit. But you focus on the objective, not on the process, not on the journey. So students will not enjoy it because they are focused on, Monday we have to submit. So what do? We have to divide everything. So that's the result. They don't become other oriented. They focus on themselves because you give them tasks, they have to accomplish the task. So I think there must be a change in perspectives in the approach. I hope I answered your question, Edward. There's another question here in the chat box. in the Philippine context, how can the spirit of bayanihan or community spirit be demonstrated in the country when the oil prices are staggeringly rising in light of the ongoing conflict in the Middle East? We have we have this problem that I think, Dan, you also have this problem in Romania, rising fuel prices.
Okay.
um, anyway, uh, so how can the spirit of bayanihan be demonstrated? I think it's not only during times of high prices of fuel or of oil that we can uh, manifest, we can express, demonstrate the bayanihan spirit. Um, as Filipinos, we know that year-round we experience typhoons and other calamities. And people during those challenges, I mean, during those times of, you know, calamities, they help together. No? Remember, during the pandemic, there is the what's this? We share food, no, pantry, no, community pantry, because that happened in the Philippines. Then during the pandemic, we have to share food to those who don't have food. No, so we have people organize pantries. They put food there, and then everybody can take know what they need. So that's a demonstration of the Bayanihan spirit, no, helping together. So I think during this time when the high prices of oil, maybe we can what do you call this? We can share rides with others. We can carpool. No, so if for example, do not use your car, drive your car when you are old, when you are the only passenger. Okay, so maybe if you have a car, you drive the car in going to school or going to work. Ask your neighbors, invite other people to ride with you. That's bayanihan, right? Instead of you driving alone your car, fuel very expensive, but you're the only passenger in your car, right? So carpooling, share rides, and so on. That could be one demonstration of bayanihan. Okay. Other questions? Yes. Thank you, Roy, for the question also.
Yes, I would have a short question. Uh, can you hear
Yes.
me?
Yes,
Yes.
please. Yes. Yes.
First of all, thank you for the presentation. You emphasized some very interesting aspects regarding the collectivistic or community-centered attitude in the Philippines. And I wanted to ask about the other pole of the tension between the individual dimension and the collective dimension, meaning regarding the individual dimension, individualistic or individual. Do you feel like the community-centered values rather subordinate the individual aspirations and values, or do they work in harmony together?
Okay. Thank you, Edward, for the question. Yes, of course, while the Filipinos emphasize this community spirit, this communal spirit, there is also um that tendency or that attitude of being individualistic. I think the question of Edward a while ago emphasized and shows this attitude, this dimension, this part of the Filipino psyche, that sometimes they want to work alone, they want to be self-oriented, that in some occasions they want to be isolated, they want to work as individuals. So I'm not saying that because of the community spirit, that individualistic tendency and attitude is no longer there. It's always there. I think it's always there. And there's always that tension between the individual and the community. But in generally in the Filipino psyche, um, this tension is somehow settled in favor of the community, because the Filipinos, they want to establish smooth interpersonal relationship. They want to belong to the community. They want to belong to a group. And the proper attitude in order to accomplish that, in order to have that kind of smooth interpersonal relationship, is to subordinate one's individual interests perhaps, or goals perhaps, or attitudes perhaps, to subordinate that, or not necessarily subordinate, but to harmonize that with the interest of the other members of the group. Like, for example, in the family, a child may have his or her plan, for example, personal plan, personal interest. He can express, of course, he can express that. He can say that, but and the family, sometimes the family may respect his personal, say personal ambition, personal plan, and so on. But at the end of the day, even if those personal interests or personal plans of the child, for example, is followed, or parents allow them to have their own personal choices, at the end of the day, it is still integrated into the bigger community. The child is made to understand that yes, you can have your own, you can work individually, but it's much better if we work this together. Okay, so there's always that dynamics, especially within the Filipino family. Of course, there are extreme cases when the individual child or an individual may just prefer to be, to be alone, to work on his own, and so on, to be independent, etc. So there's always that tension between independence of the individual and the community or the family. But in most cases, it is settled, settled and harmonized as part of the group, as part of the community. I hope I answered your question there.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. I think there is a here in from Joel Sagon. Given the visible transition from Bahay Kubo to the Bahay na Bato, a more stable and safer structure, something that now withstands typhoons, except when typhoons are accompanied by floods, and many communities in the Philippines today. Do you think this transition also constitutes a change in the attitudes, very accommodating attitude? I'm sorry, attitude, a change in the attitudes of Filipinos. The tuloy po attitude, very accommodating attitude, somehow slowly replaced by competition, by indifference, and even suspicion. We have become less trusting of one another, and many Filipinos have become less trustworthy, including the ones in public offices nowadays. Can we also see a kind of correlation between this transition in our dwelling place and the attitude that we have eventually developed? Dr. Well, I think there is also a transition. Yes, if there is a transition from the Bahay Kubo to the Bahay na Bato, from being accommodating, being trusting, to less trusting, being suspicious. I think, yes, we can say there is a correlation and a transition, no? There is, no? We can observe that actually. That Filipinos nowadays are more suspicious of others. Like, for example, in the older days, we are not so much mindful of locking the door. I mean, closing the house. Like for example, the Nipa hut is not a fully secured house. You only have it could easily be broken into. Now we have concrete houses, garden houses. So that's also there's also a transition from this idea of community, this idea of being safe in a community to not being safe anymore. Okay, and that's very unfortunate actually. But I think the cause of that is we have become actually referencing the question of Edward a while ago, that we have also become individualistic. Yes, we still communal, but in some occasions we have become individualistic, we have become materialistic. So it's always a tension between community, the security, the safety, uh, you know, brought by community, and the suspicion, the untrustworthiness, the indifference brought about by being individualistic and materialistic. If you can only go back to the time when, you don't have to be always on guard, you don't always have to padlock your door and so on. But I think that's a byproduct of modernity. No, I think that's a byproduct of technological advancement. I think that's a byproduct of how advanced we are. Yes, we have advanced materially, technologically, economically, but we have receded to the things that you mentioned. No? So there's always already a change of attitude. No? Parang it's like during the old times, we don't hire people to protect us. Now we hire people to protect us. So sign of the times. I hope I answered your question, Dr. Joel. Another question here. Truly, the traditional image of the Bahay Kubo perfectly encapsulates the Filipino ideal of bayanihan or communal unity. However, recent years have exposed several political fault lines and fragmentation in our society, compounded by the influx of globalized liberal values. In light of this, how should we view the concept of bayanihan today? Some would say, in the light of the present circumstances, it has become merely a nostalgic myth we cling to, or is it possible that this communal spirit is simply evolving into new modern forms of civic engagement? Do you believe traditional symbols like the Bahay Kubo, like bayanihan can survive the shift towards globalized individualism, and are they being diluted into mere historical metaphors? Actually, your questions are all connected, related. This fragmentation of society, globalized liberal values, those are actually the unsaid cause of materialism and individualism. All right, because of this highly globalized, of our highly globalized, individualistic, consumeristic, materialistic society, we have, or our traditional values of community of bayanihan have been set aside. I think for me, that's the right word. It's been set aside. It's there because we still practice that in some occasions, some moments, in some, like for example, during calamities, we practice that. But sometimes when we are left alone, sometimes when we are, when we don't experience these challenges, these problems, we tend to be individualistic. Okay, so Yes, we can say there's still some nostalgia on our part to cling to that traditional values. But if nostalgia is a way of putting those traditional values at the center, in other words, not to set them aside, but we always have to treat moments or the present as the kind of moment that there are always challenges, like calamities, when the Bayanihan spirit is very strong. I think if that's the way of bringing back these traditional values, I think we have to we have to do that. It could be a modern and civic form of engagement, no? But I would like to see our traditional values as Filipinos taking center stage. I don't think it's diluted. I just think that sometimes we set aside those traditional values, those core values, simplicity, humility, other-centeredness, family values, because they are always there. They're always there. Only that there are moments when we just set them aside. We don't, we don't give importance to them. But if nostalgia could bring that again, front and center, why not? But it should not just be some kind of a nostalgia. It has to result into behaviors, into action. Like for example, again, what I said about carpooling, helping people during calamities, the pantry, community pantry, and so on. Meaning to say, they are there. Only that sometimes it's set aside. I hope I answered your question there. From Marta, wonderful presentation. Thank you, Professor, for sharing the iconic Bahay Kubo, a very complex symbol despite its simplicity. It was really amazing for me to know those details about your culture. Nowadays, in your country, this communion persists in the relationships, in how they work, their jobs, they interact during their studies and politics. So, how they work, how they interact during studies and in politics. Also, can you suggest some clues to improve the authentic dialogue nowadays in the context of virtual challenges and consequences of the communication, discontinuity, emoticon answers, more self-centered and less oriented to the listening of the other? Okay. I think, thank you, Martha G, for these comments and for the question. Again, what changed? My thought goes to this question. What changed? What has changed? What has changed? I think our modern society has changed to the point that, uh, of course, brought about by modernization, advancement in science and technology, our lifestyle has become so convenient. Our lifestyle has become so easy in the sense that uh, we can easily and very fast, quickly answer our needs. One click of a finger, your problem is solved, at least materially, economically, no? In a technological sense. So, what is now the outcome? What is now the byproduct of this? Well, the byproduct of that is again individualism. The byproduct of that is indifference. The byproduct of that is, you know, uh, comfort. The byproduct of that is easy way out. Okay, so we no longer communicate, converse in a personal way. Why can't we converse personally in an authentic, sincere way? Because we are always in a hurry. If there is a problem, we don't talk about the problem anymore. We just find an easy way out, an easy solution, like the task given to students. If you're given a task, what do? Find the easiest solution. So you don't work together to find a solution, a genuine, sincere solution. So authentic dialogues, you throw it out, right? So work virtually, you work, you answer, you communicate by emoticon. No, when you are asked, "How are you?" If you are asked by a friend, by somebody, send a message, "How are you?" The easy answer, the fast answer is okay, or sometimes K, or sometimes just thumbs up. So there's no authentic dialogue anymore because one, we are always in a hurry. We want to find an easy way out, easy solution. And the advancement in technology allows us to do that, right? So we don't have to meet face to face, just have to communicate virtually and so on. So uh, that is the that is the that is the result. So how do we deal with this? I think we have to go back to the personal. I think we have to be more personal in our dealings with others. I think we have to be less individualistic. I think we have to be less technical or technological. Like for example, imagine if now there is crisis in oil, and all of a sudden, like God forbids, but sometimes it could be a solution. Brown out, brown out. So brown out, that means no internet, no cell phone. What do you do during brown out? Maybe you can talk to one another personally. So, for example, in the family setting, brown out. So everybody stops using their phones. They start talking. They start communicating. They start recognizing the presence of others. Maybe sometimes, maybe what what Carl Jaspers calls shipwreck is important in human life. It's important in human life so that we can pause. Look what happened during the pandemic. There's a great pause, and everybody started reflecting about their lives, praying, returning to God, and so on. Maybe we need those moments. I hope I answer your question, Martha G. It's Martha. I think from Basilisa, I think there is some adaptation needed when we move from rural to urban settings. Yes, we need some adaptation when we move to the urban settings from rural. I think the solution is to return to the rural settings where life is much simpler. Job, can you comment on the concept of Bahay Kubo captured in the song wherein plants around it is considered part of the Bahay Kubo definition? Actually, for the sake of our foreign friends, there is a song in the Philippines, very popular song. It's a children's song about Bahay Kubo. But the Bahay Kubo, the song does not talk about the Bahay Kubo. It talks about the plants, the vegetables surrounding the Bahay Kubo. So it enumerates all these vegetables. Bahay Kubo, we have the Bahay Kahit Munti, small house. Halaman doon, halaman means the plantation, the plants there. So it's a song that enumerates all the different types of plants or vegetables, the vegetables around the Bahay Kubo. I think I cannot say much about the connection between the Bahay Kubo and the definition of Bahay Kubo, only to say I think uh, that expresses the connection of the Bahay Kubo to the environment, to nature. No, so because farming is a human activity that connects man to nature, to the environment. So if you say the Bahay Kubo is an expression, a symbol of our connection to nature, and one human activity that connects us to nature is farming, and the product of farming are these vegetables, then you see the connection between the Bahay Kubo, the song, and the Bahay Kubo, the structure, the house. I hope that makes sense, Lisa. Uh, okay, I think I have addressed all the questions here. Yeah, I think so. Unless there are other questions. None.
Yes, yes.
Your,
Um,
your
Thank you
comments.
very much. It was great um to discover something very interesting, especially for us, for non-Filipino, and the possibility to think actively, comparing with some other perspectives we already had in this lectures, and to discover what it means to philosophizing as an active process. So it's not about thinking theoretically, it's about connecting, you know? So we have to connect to what? To our values and to our spirituality in a context. But for this generation, we have to do it now for this generation. So what is the point here? That tradition, like your tradition, has, how to say, a wisdom of survival, no, as you said, but also how they understood the relationship between inner self and outer self and nature. But this is your wisdom, and this is important because comparing with the other way of wisdom, we can discover that is a way of active philosophizing. We have to recover as academics, as people dealing with other to express, to transmit something. We have to transmit, as you said before, what we have to do in education. It's not just a theoretical with no point structure. But we as philosophers, I think this is the task of philosophers. We have this task to understand our values and to put it in the right context. And this is it. It's not much, it's not less, it's not uh, difficult, but as you framed your perspective, it's a starting point for a way of educating or transmitting, especially in crisis time. In the crisis time, what we are doing. Let's see what is our way of developing uh, um, a response to the challenge. So this is very important. This is very important. So we have to learn us from another culture, from your wisdom, from your way of dealing, and putting together more perspective is great. It's very important.
Um, is that a comment? Sorry.
Yes,
Is that a comment, Dan, or a question?
it's rather
Sorry.
a comment, but yes, we have to develop more about this comparative aspect later. Maybe we'll do a
Oh, yeah.
roundtable with some people from the other perspectives already presented.
Yes, yes. Yeah.
We'll have one from Australia Aboriginals with John
Mm.
O'Zolins
Yeah,
next month,
yeah, of course.
and
Oh,
from
good.
South Africa on Ubuntu from Patrick. I'll try to bring a more wide perspective of this kind of active philosophizing by including or by using the values and spirituality in a certain context. And I think we will be very productive by adding more and more key aspects. I think in your presentation there are already 3 or 4 very important key aspects. I never been aware of them, so this is important, you know.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, so it's about awareness, no? To be aware. Maybe you have a knowledge of your values and relationship with the spiritual life, but you are not very aware of them. So this happens because we are very trapped in this modern way of living, individualistic and so on, and we are forgetting the wise solution for our issues, even personal issues, how you deal with your depression, no? How you deal with your anxiety, how you deal with your material problems. There are solutions and very good, very functional because they are for generations. They survived um
Yeah.
very well, and they didn't lost their symbolic attitude toward reality and to ourselves. And this is problem. This is a problem. The symbolic attitude to see that it's an very complex thing. This reality is the material level, but also something beyond. So we cannot reduce to our individualistic, egoistic way of being as we were keep moving. Yes. So
Yeah.
yes, this is the point of our attempt to uh, produce awareness. We have to produce awareness. Yeah. Thank you, Joe. It's great.
Thank thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
So we'll have the occasion to talk again in some other
Sure.
conversations
Yeah.
on this project. The project it has also this debates part. But now we will gather some presentations, some lectures, a number of lectures, and then we'll start something like a debate. Yeah, and to see how
Okay.
people are reacting to the others' values and to others'
Yeah.
wisdom. Yeah,
Yes.
great,
Yes.
great.
Great. Great. Great.
Thank you.
Okay.
So, if you want to say something more, or the others to do some more comments, yes, yes, we see some.
Uh,
Yeah.
I think there are some like there are. Let me just read some of the chats uh, here. So I will just read some of the comments here. Thank you from Justin Canaria. Thank you, Doc. Our hopes that these enduring symbols remain a beacon of the perennial values for the Filipino people have always stood for. From Martha G, thank you, Professor. I appreciate your answer. From Basilisa, I just realized that even as we move from rural to urban, that being close to nature did not change, as many found themselves still trying to plant in the city homes. So yes, Filipinos yearn to connect with nature. Thank you, Joe, for your insights, and Dan for the platform to learn. Okay, so I think now personally, I would like to thank the participants, those who actively participated. Thank you for your comments, for your questions. They made the presentation and the discussion more meaningful and more lively. And Dan, thank you so much for this invitation. I hope to see you very soon. You have to invite me to,
Yes, yes.
to go back to Romania,
Okay,
and
okay.
I have to invite you to come over here in Manila also,
Sure.
because you've been to places near the Philippines. You've been to Vietnam and China, but you've never been to the Philippines.
Yes.
I've been to Romania several times. I think you have to pay me a visit also.
Okay. Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Yes, yes, sure.
Yeah. Yes. Okay.
So we'll talk these days again, and I thank you for today and for a great time together. It's a very special time to celebrate together, to share together some thoughts. I think we need more of this. This is special, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I agree. Okay. So thank you very much. I
Thank
think,
you. Okay. See you soon. See you soon.
okay. Thank you so much.
All of
Thank you.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you.